So, it's no mystery that I really like Metal Gear Solid 5. I mean, I started this channel up on it, but long before that I was playing this game. It was the first game I ever remember getting hyped for the release of, aside from maybe Halo 4, but it was nothing compared to how excited I got for Metal Gear Solid 5. It came out, I liked it, I was disappointed by a lot of things, I thought about ways to improve it, I would have conversations about it, I would dream it, I played the game in every conceivable way, with every conceivable tool. I've even played the multiplayer now. Like, it's just, Metal Gear Solid 5 has been a big part of my life, and an even bigger part of this channel. However, I was playing it maybe about a week ago now, and I was doing one of the random missions. Forget the name of it, but it's where you have to stop that convoy on that village that's built into the mountain. Cool village design, really interesting. I was playing with unsuppressed weapons to make the stealth a little more, intriguing and tense. I'll have some really cool encounters where quiet covers my ass. I'm using CQC. I managed to get into the base, I rescue a prisoner, I take out their communications, I scan the documents I need to scan, and then I'm on my way out, slowly making my, cautious retreat since the enemy heard my gunfire but still didn't know where I was, and I walked into a landmine. And this landmine was on a spot that you can't really reach unless you're exiting the base. The AI has no reason to walk around here. However, there it was, and it blew up. Didn't kill me, didn't alert them to where I was. It just blew up, hurt me a little bit, put that, blood stain on the leg, although I think I have Demon Snake, so it doesn't really fucking matter, and just knocked me on my ass. And it just took me right the fuck out of the gameplay. And I just sat there for a second with the controller in my hand as the convoy drove by and the enemy started calling in, reporting an explosion. And I was just like, what the fuck is this even for? Like, why is this even here? Like, there's no real consequence to it other than to just interrupt the gameplay flow. I was into infiltrating this base, saving the prisoner, taking those risky gunshots to disable communications, and I was doing my sneaky exit in the moment completely, because when Metal Gear Solid 5 gets going, it goes. But then this just took me right out of it. Didn't change anything, I could still proceed the same way out, but I didn't fucking want to. And that brings us to the topic of today's video. I'm tired. Alright, I'm getting older. I'm not old by any means, but okay, let me put it like this. Back at the end of high school, I was really into anime. I'm sure you guys have watched my videos, have noticed that my creative character in Metal Gear Solid 5 is called Kiritsugu Emiya. I've referenced Fate in a couple other shows here and there. It was my go-to thing for a good couple of years. But then, towards the middle of university, I started not necessarily outgrowing it, because I think that's a pretentious way to look at it, but I could no longer relate to certain shows where, the character sees a pair of titties and it's like, whoa. It just got really off-putting. I mean, there's still shows that I watch now, like Cowboy Bebop, Black Lagoon. I still have a soft spot for Fate, and I think it's aged better than most other shows because the character actually fucks. But the point is, there was a period of change where my tastes shifted, and I think that's happening again here. I feel like this landmine was the last straw. Out of all the landmines, all the weird, janky sliding off hilltops, and all the other issues of Phantom Pain, I've spent so much time, I realize, talking about how to improve this game, but that's also simultaneously talking about why this game sucks. And don't get me wrong, I still like the Phantom Pain, I'm still gonna play it, but I'm just tired of playing games, having the majority of my time playing or thinking about that game dedicated to how it could have been better. Then I booted up Ground Zeroes, and by God, this is everything I could have wanted Phantom Pain to be. My expectations for Phantom Pain were set by ground zeros. The way the narrative in the main op is directly tied to Peace Walker and Big Boss's story. The way the side ops all tie into the themes of POWs and covert ops and illegal CIA operations is really freaking cool. The way you get such variety in the missions. I can do a sneak-in rescue mission, there's an assassination mission, there is a loud and proud explosive from your chopper mission, based mostly on combat. There is a really cool unlockable mission that kind of has its own version of older games photo mode with the way you have to like zoom in on certain things and trigger memories. There's like sabotage missions with their own rescue parts and all this kind of stuff, and it just all feels good. It executes every single thing it wants to do. The only mission I feel that doesn't live up to the same bar of quality is the mission with Raiden. I feel like that's because Hideo Kojima could not give a shit about Raiden or Rising because he didn't really have much to do with it, and the guy was going on an ego trip, and you could really fucking feel it in this game. You know, you can't even like pick him up and like throw him in the mission where you rescue him. He's that much of a bitch that he will not allow you to toss his character model in the digital representation of it. I was gonna do more of those Metal Gear Solid 5 cut content videos, but I realized I didn't fucking want to. Because so much of that stuff was just like, oh, Kojima was gonna put himself in as a character, but then removed himself because he didn't want players to be able to kill him or hurt him. And then there were other ideas like the sheep head, for example, which was something I always wanted and expected in the game, where you could, you know, use flocks of sheep to interrupt convoys or sneak into bases. And it's just like, yeah, I don't want to do those content videos anymore because it's like, who the fuck cares? That thing was so botched by this little man and his little fucking ego, or his big fucking ego. But yeah, anyways, Raiden definitely gets the short end of the stick here. I mean, even when you're going around and scanning all the different things, you can scan Metal Gear Rising and Kaz will deadass say just, oh, I guess that's nothing special, so I guess fuck you to Raiden players. But aside from that, every mission in this game has such a bar of quality that's so high that it's just such a joy to replay over and over and over again. The sandbox is really fucking solid. With the enemies, you get the normal rifle variants, you get the shotgunner variants you usually see inside, you get the reinforcement variants that come in if you've been doing like too much damage, you get the all-imposing Humvee, which is like, you know, you need explosives or this thing's gonna fuck you up, so in missions where you're playing more quietly, it really feels like that deadly threat. Honestly, I think it's not only one of the best Metal Gear enemies, but probably the best stealth, or one of the best stealth game enemies, just because of how imposing it is and how it brings this element of tension when you're sneaking around or trying to get prisoners out of there. I like the usage of cameras that encourage weapons that, you know, aren't trank, so even if you're playing non-lethally, having a weapon that fires lethal ammo to destroy cameras is useful. I love the way the level design in the base is all like immersive in the sense that it makes sense but also caters to gameplay. So for example, take the POW camp on the cliffside here. You have a bunch of prisoners, they're guarded by, you know, well telegraphed guards. You see the guard tower, you see an area where there's like a porta potty covered by something, so it makes sense a dude would stand there, and then there's a dude by the gate and maybe a dude inside. If you go along the ridge there, you'll see a little shack where there might be some guards, but if you walk down the rocks, there's a little cave that's perfect for leaving your rescued prisoners, planning future operations, or just having a moment of quiet time to reorganize yourself when you're trying to figure out your mission. The entire base is like this, from, you know, the tight as nails, like, main base where you can shut off the power, but then everyone gets alerted. You have like the watchtower area there and the spotlights that light up that helicopter pad, but there's still enough cover like put around there immersively to give you a chance to sneak. The barracks, the other prisoner section, it's all designed fucking perfectly, and that's a big reason as to why it caters to so many different mission types. It's what Phantom Pain was really trying to do. A space that could, you know, cater to however you want to play and a million different ways of play. And here it works. On the note of the prisoners, I mean, Phantom Pain has always been such a letdown. You'll see a prisoner and they'll be talking and not really say anything. They'll just be like, help me, oh, thank you, and you Fulton them and that's it. In Ground Zeroes, you're actually picking people up and you need to carry them somewhere safe and then decide, do I call in the chopper or do I leave this guy here for now and make sure not to forget about him after. And even like the regular prisoners all have like these lengthy lines of dialogues. You have the guy that wants to get to a phone so he can call his family and let them know that he's safe. There's a guy who really thought he was gonna die here and breaks out into tears, thanking you for saving him from like the pits of despair. Then you have special prisoners that give you information on how to infiltrate the harder parts of the base. Or you have a prisoner voiced by Matthew Mercer in the Sabotage mission who's actually working for Big Boss. He was a spy here that was captured. And he gives you, information about everything he saw there. But then he talks about how how Big Boss was his motivation for getting through all of this. And he's so happy you're here. He believes in your ideology and he is loyal to you till the end. And that is just such a cool, cutscene worthy Metal Gear moment, just streamlined right into gameplay. And also the fact that I hear Kiritsugu Emiya telling me all this is pretty fucking cool too. Then we get to the weapons. I mean, this is probably the best balanced sandbox in all of Metal Gear. The shotgun is punchy, it's threatening with enemies, it's threatening when you have it, the range is realistic, it feels fair when you get hit, and it feels powerful when you hit other enemies, and you can, hit a bunch of them bunched up in a group. You have the Trank pistol, which actually isn't overpowered here since there's a consistent amount of drop if you try to shoot guys from too far away. Ammo is limited, and the slower cocking and firing actually feels like a downside, especially when you get into combat. You have the suppressed MRS-4 carbine, which is a good kind of almost power weapon that you get by default on the easier difficulty, and yeah, it definitely makes the game easier, being able to take out enemies, being able to take out cameras, and pretty much do whatever you need it to do, although that suppressor will wear out, and at which point it just becomes like another combat weapon. Then you have the standard MRS-4 rifle, which is just straight up combat. It plays the role of just that basic enemy weapon or basic combat weapon that you can pick up that doesn't really specialize in anything. Then you have that super MRS-4 that comes with the scope, which is really good during reflex mode for getting headshots really fucking far away, having that combat capability, and then getting a grenade launcher so you can stand up to things like the Humvee. Then of course you have the sniper rifle, which is really well balanced in the sense that it's powerful, you can hit guys from across the base, but it's not suppressed. So you really need to think about your positioning, be aware of your surroundings, and plan your shots like you would with a sniper. If anything, this is the best evolution of the SVD, or that sniper type role, since that SVD in Snake Eater. You have the rocket launcher, which fulfills a very simple purpose: sabotage of enemy weapon emplacements or taking on the Humvee. It's that super miniature boss fight section against this Humvee or against something serious. You get the Urugan, which is this really cool shotgun pistol that's non-lethal. I've talked so much about how Metal Gear could use a non-lethal combat shotgun to mix up its sandbox, and here it is here. So if you really want to go non-lethal and you want to be prepared for combat, you can bring this along with you. And then of course the SMG. I fucking love this thing. You trade out the reliable knockout potential of the Trank pistol for a little bit more of an erratic, recoil heavy but lethal and still suppressed SMG that you can use when you have guys up in hostage situations. So in combat, it adds this whole air of strategy, mixing it up with your CQC moves, taking out dudes. In stealth, it's a really good, headshot weapon, or, going for the body, but it's harder to aim than the MRS-4. So it's really for those close-knit, carrying prisoners, a supplementary, it's basically the USP from the tanker mission, just in full auto. It's like an evolution of that, and I love it. Now, I'm recording this later, so if you hear a difference in the audio, it's simply because I'm retarded, and I forgot. Not that those two things have anything to do with each other. But anyways, you have the AMD-14, which is like the stand-in 1911 and default pistol for the guard. So they'll use it when they're downed, they'll whip it out after you've held them up and, you know, drop their assault rifle. It's a really niche but cool tool. It acts more like a hard-hitting magnum than how 1911s are usually portrayed in games. So, for example, it might not be something that you ever really carry around, but if you're in a situation where you only have your tranq pistol and you need a little lethal firepower, maybe you use CQC to take a gun off of a guy and then shoot all the guys around in reflex mode and then drop it. It's a very one and done weapon, although if you do want to carry this as a lethal sidearm, it's totally applicable in combat. So I'm sure if I sat here long enough, I could probably see some overlap in some of the sandbox elements, but it's balanced pretty fucking well. For the most part, everything has its purpose. Even those landmines I hate in Metal Gear Solid 5, here they can kill prisoners that you're carrying, or they can be used to block off certain enemies from getting to a point you want to get to, or they can be used by the enemies to stop you from getting to points that you find safe. So here, even the worst part of Metal Gear Solid 5 from a gameplay perspective works. And then of course the unlocks, like I could go all day talking about like the cool shit there is to unlock. Different missions, and then, you know, if you get all the XOF patches, you unlock the Solid Snake mission, where you can unlock a Solid Snake costume or Gray Fox costume. That also changes all the guards to look like how they did on Shadow Moses. You have all the cassette tapes for music you can unlock. You have the cassette tapes that tell you the disturbing things that happened on the base and more stuff about the story. It's just more and more reasons to go back and replay, versus Metal Gear Solid 5, The Phantom Pains, kind of, okay, here's the actual story because we're too lazy to put in the fucking game, and I'm trying to filter money out from this to do PT so I can get a job at Sony type of bullshit. Ground Zeroes is just good. It's smaller. It might not be as like polished in the gameplay as Metal Gear Solid 5's moveset, but its pacing, its level design, its sandbox all benefits from its shrunken size. And the reason it exists like this is because it was just meant to be like a kind of demo for the Phantom Pain. But in doing so, in accepting limitations and not being able to execute every crazy idea, you end up with much more game than content. And that's not to say every, game has to be a small game or it's garbage. I mean, just take the new Resident Evil 4 remake. That's a pretty big game that adds a lot from, to the foundations of the original, and it's still really goddamn good. Has so much replayability, collectibles, outfits, boss fights, different weapons and ways to play, a sandbox that improves on the original. But there's a part of me that really likes the Resident Evil 3 remake because of how concise it is, how replayable it is. I'm getting pretty fucking close to 100%ing it on every single difficulty. The bonus weapons that I unlock are built for certain difficulties. The outfits, well, there's only one outfit, so it kind of suffers in that department, but there's like gameplay modifiers to unlock, there's concept art. It's really cool, and because it's such a short game, I can really appreciate the density. I can go for those smaller details. I could go for those speedrunning challenges. It's very similar to the enjoyment I get from Metal Gear Solid 5 Ground Zeroes. Of course, we can also apply this to Halo 1. A lot of people complain about Halo 1's larger levels for dragging on, having certain enemies they don't really enjoy, or having, areas where they get lost, but everybody talks about the silent cartographer. Now, I know this footage looks a little shitty, but that's because I recorded this off of an original Xbox, and the recording software cuts out part of the picture and, misshapes the actual image, but you're still seeing pure, raw Halo just as God intended. And yeah, I understand why people really like this level. It's short, it's not a very linear design with different goals that you can accomplish in different ways, and each playthrough feels a little bit different. Of course you have the same basic beats, but like Ground Zeroes or like Resident Evil 3, the pacing, the level design, the sandbox all jives in a way where there's just enough restraint, just enough limitations to keep the goals of what the developers were trying to achieve with this game or with this level really clear. And all three of these examples really benefit from that. Anyways, this has been Pliskin. I'm really fucking tired and frustrated right now. I got all this shit going on with like paperwork for trying to get a job and yeah. So this video is gonna help me get my mind off that. But anyways, hope you guys are doing good. We're probably gonna do that Q&A video next. I'll see how that poll goes. If you haven't voted on that, go ahead and take a look at it. So, you know, I could talk about something that the majority of you guys actually want me to talk about in the Q&A. And yeah, this has been Pliskin, over and out.
This is Solid Snake. Hey, subscribe to Pliskin Boy. God damn it.
You heard him.